You ever notice how sometimes when you stop running after something, that's when you finally start to find yourself? We live in a world that tells men to chase success, validation, love, attention. We're told that the pursuit defines us, that we have to win something or someone to prove we matter. But what happens when the chasing stops? When a man finally stops chasing her, something powerful shifts, not because he's bitter, not because he's given up, but because he's awake. Let's talk about that. It's strange how often we spend our lives trying to prove that we matter to someone else. We chase approval, attention, affection, anything that tells us we're seen. It starts young, doesn't it? You get that gold star in school, that pat on the back from a parent, that smile from someone you like, and your heart lights up. You start to connect being seen with being worthy, and before you know it, that pattern follows you into adulthood. So, when a man loves someone, really loves her, he often believes that his worth is measured by how much he can give, how much he can fix, how much of himself he can sacrifice to keep her close. He starts to mistake love for a transaction. If I give enough, I'll be enough. But that's not love. That's fear disguised as devotion. And there's this moment, quiet but powerful, when he stops, when he finally realizes that the love he's been trying to earn from someone else is really the love he's been denying himself. That's when everything starts to change. I knew a man once. He was a good man, kind heart, big dreams, but he spent years trying to win the affection of someone who kept him at a distance. Every time she pulled away, he ran faster. Every time she got colder, he tried harder. He was addicted, not to her, but to the idea of finally being enough for her. It wasn't even about her anymore. It was about proving to himself that he was worth choosing. When she finally walked away for good, he broke. Really broke. You could see it in his eyes. That hollow, lost look of someone who doesn't know who he is without the chase. But here's the thing about breaking. Sometimes it's the only way we wake up. He started spending time alone. Long walks, late nights without his phone. And one evening, he said something that stuck with me. He said, I realized I've been fighting for someone to love me the way I never learned to love myself. That hit hard, because that's the truth for a lot of people. We chase love not because we're weak, but because somewhere along the way, we forgot that we were already whole. The world doesn't make that easy to remember. We're surrounded by messages that say, you're not enough until you have someone. Movies, music, ads. They sell us this idea that happiness is always in someone else's hands. But here's the quiet truth. If your sense of worth depends on someone staying, then you've handed them the keys to your peace. When a man finally stops searching for his worth in someone else, he doesn't become colder. He becomes clearer. He starts to see himself not as half of something waiting to be completed, but as a whole person learning to share his life freely. He stops performing for love. He starts being love. It's not an easy shift. There's grief in letting go of the idea that someone else will fix you. There's a strange emptiness when you stop reaching out for validation and start sitting in silence with yourself. But that silence, it's sacred. That's where you meet the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. He begins to remember what it feels like to enjoy his own company. He starts doing things not to impress, but to express. He spends an afternoon painting again, or playing guitar, or taking that drive just to watch the sunset. He's not waiting for someone to say, I'm proud of you. He says it to himself, and something beautiful happens then. He starts attracting people differently, because when you no longer need someone to make you feel whole, you start drawing in people who appreciate your wholeness instead of feeding on your insecurity. That's the quiet shift between attachment and connection. It's like that old saying, when you stop chasing the wrong things, you give the right things a chance to catch you. It's not just poetic, it's real. When you're busy proving your worth, you're too distracted to notice the people and opportunities that would actually value you as you are. You can see it in his posture, in his eyes, in the way he walks into a room, no longer looking around to see who's watching, but just being there. Present, grounded. There's a quiet confidence in a man who's learned that his worth isn't up for negotiation. And it doesn't mean he stops loving, quite the opposite. He loves deeper now because he's not loving from emptiness. He's loving from overflow. He gives without losing himself. He listens without needing to fix. He's no longer trying to be chosen, he's simply choosing. A psychologist named Kristen Neff once said that self-compassion isn't self-pity, it's self-connection. It's looking at your own flaws and pain with the same tenderness you'd offer to someone you care about. And that's the key. When a man finally turns that compassion inward, he heals generations of silence. He breaks the pattern that says men can't feel, can't need, can't hurt. He stops apologizing for his softness. He stops shrinking for acceptance. He starts walking in truth, even if it means walking alone for a while. Because that solitude isn't emptiness anymore. It's peace. And you know what's interesting? The moment he stops chasing, life starts meeting him halfway. The right people show up. The right opportunities open. Because energy doesn't lie. When you respect yourself, the world starts reflecting that respect back. Sometimes that means the person he was chasing comes back, not because he begged, but because his peace became magnetic. Other times it means she doesn't come back. And that's okay too, because the real win wasn't getting her. It was finding himself. I think that's one of the hardest lessons to learn, that not every story has to end with, and they lived happily ever after. Some stories end with, and he finally learned to live, and that's enough. There's beauty in realizing that you can love someone and still let them go, that you can wish them well without wishing them back, that your worth doesn't decrease because someone couldn't see it. That's not arrogance, that's freedom. So when a man stops searching for his worth in someone else, he doesn't become less of a lover, he becomes more of a man. One who loves because he wants to, not because he has to. One who knows that peace is worth more than attention. One who understands that love, real love, begins the moment you stop begging for it and start embodying it. And maybe that's what all of us are really learning, to stop measuring our value by who stays or who leaves, and start seeing it in who we are when no one's watching. Because when you finally stop chasing love, that's when love, in its truest form, finally finds you. When you're caught up in the chase, you don't really see the person in front of you, not as they are. You see a version you've built in your mind. You see the potential, the promise, the idea of what it could be. It's like standing in a fog and convincing yourself that what you're seeing is solid ground. You build stories, fill in gaps, rewrite moments to fit the dream. And that dream feels so good that you ignore the quiet signs that it's not real. You tell yourself it's love, but most times it's longing mixed with imagination. When a man is chasing her, he's often not chasing her at all. He's chasing who he hopes she'll become, or what he wants to feel when she looks back at him. It's a form of projection, really. He puts all his desires, his fears, his need for meaning into that one person, and in doing that, he stops seeing her as human. He turns her into a symbol of love, of validation, of home. But people aren't symbols, they're just people. And when he finally stops running, when he lets the chase end, that's when the fog begins to clear. It's a strange feeling, that moment. You start looking back at things that used to seem perfect, and suddenly you see the cracks. You see the late replies that made you uneasy, the way you excused disrespect because you were afraid to lose what little connection was left. You see that you were carrying the relationship on your shoulders, mistaking exhaustion for effort. It's not bitterness, it's clarity. And clarity can hurt more than heartbreak because it shows you all the times you betrayed yourself trying to make something work that wasn't meant to. I remember a friend telling me about a woman he was obsessed with. She was beautiful, mysterious, unpredictable, all of the things that kept him chasing. He said, "I just can't stop thinking about her. There's something about her." And I asked him, "Do you love her? Or do you love how she makes you feel?" He paused for a long time before admitting, "I think I love the feeling." That's what fantasy does. It tricks you into believing that your own emotional high is proof of connection, but it's not. It's chemistry mixed with hope, and it burns out fast once reality steps in. There's a study that once showed how the brain reacts when people pursue unattainable love. Dopamine spikes, the same chemical that fuels addiction. You become hooked not on the person but on the possibility. Every little breadcrumb of attention feels like a win. Every silence feels like a cliffhanger. It's exhausting. You start confusing emotional intensity with depth. But love, real love, isn't a roller coaster. It's a steady walk beside someone who sees you too. When the chase ends, a man begins to see that the version of her he fell for wasn't always real. He begins to notice the difference between compatibility and connection, between fantasy and truth. Maybe she wasn't cruel, maybe she wasn't perfect either. She was just human. And that's the hardest part, isn't it? To accept that the magic you built in your mind might have just been your own reflection looking back at you. Reality doesn't hit all at once. It comes in small, quiet ways. Like when you stop checking your phone every 5 minutes, when you realize you haven't thought about her in hours, when her favorite song comes on and you don't feel that familiar ache anymore. That's when you start seeing clearly, not just her, but yourself. You start understanding why you held on so tightly. Maybe it wasn't love you were afraid to lose. Maybe it was your own hope that someone could finally make you feel safe in your skin. And when you finally face that, it changes everything. You stop romanticizing red flags as passion. You stop mistaking inconsistency for mystery. You stop calling emotional chaos chemistry. You start valuing calmness, clarity, honesty. You start realizing that love isn't supposed to leave you guessing every day. It's not supposed to feel like a test you keep failing. Love should make you rest easier, not harder. A man who sees reality begins to love differently. He doesn't chase anymore because he understands that real connection doesn't require chasing. It meets you halfway. He doesn't idolize people, he appreciates them. He doesn't fall for potential. He values presence. And when he gives his heart again, he does it with both eyes open. That doesn't mean he becomes cynical. He's not bitter, he's just grounded. He knows that beauty without honesty fades fast, that attraction without alignment leads nowhere, that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from something that doesn't see you back. There's grace in that kind of letting go. It's not defeat, it's self-respect. Reality has a quiet kind of beauty. It's not fireworks, it's a steady flame. It's not fantasy, it's something you can actually build on. When you stop chasing illusions, you start living in truth. And truth lasts longer than excitement. You notice how peaceful life becomes when you stop forcing connections. You stop decoding mixed signals. Stop rehearsing conversations in your head. Stop making excuses for why someone can't meet you where you are. You realize that love doesn't require solving a puzzle. It's about being understood without having to explain your worth every time. And it's not just about relationships either. Seeing reality extends into everything. The job you thought would define you, the people you thought would never change, the versions of yourself you thought you had to be loved. When you start seeing clearly, you stop clinging to illusions and start living authentically. One day, that man wakes up and looks in the mirror, and for the first time, he sees the one person who's been there all along, himself. Not the man trying to impress, not the man trying to win, but the man who finally understands that his peace is worth more than any fantasy. He realizes that love isn't supposed to blind you, it's supposed to open your eyes. And maybe somewhere down the line, he meets someone new, someone real, and this time, he doesn't chase, he walks beside her. He listens more than he performs. He sees her not as a dream to conquer, but as a human being to connect with. That's when love starts to feel different, lighter, calmer, deeper. Because now it's built on truth. Seeing reality isn't about losing faith in love. It's about having faith in something stronger, clarity. Because clarity brings peace, and peace is where real love grows. When a man stops chasing illusions, he's not losing anything real. He's just stepping out of a dream that was never meant to last. And once his eyes adjust to the light of truth, he realizes that reality, with all its imperfections, its honesty, its rawness, was what he needed all along. It's not as shiny as fantasy, it's not as thrilling, but it's real. And real is enough. You ever notice how much energy we give to things that drain us? How much time, thought, emotion, and effort we pour into chasing people or outcomes that were never meant to stay. When a man has been chasing someone, giving everything, overthinking, waiting, hoping, it's like his entire world starts to revolve around one point. Every heartbeat, every thought, every decision somehow connects back to that person. And when that chase finally ends, when he realizes he can't keep pouring from an empty cup, there's a silence that follows, a strange kind of quiet. At first, it feels like loss. But over time, he starts to understand that what he's really feeling is space. Space to breathe, space to rebuild, space to redirect. That's the moment when things begin to shift, because all that energy, all that passion, all that focus he once used trying to win someone's heart doesn't just disappear. Energy doesn't vanish, it transforms. The difference is now he gets to choose where it goes. It starts small. He wakes up one morning and feels something he hasn't felt in a long time. Curiosity. He starts asking himself questions that used to scare him. What do I actually want? What makes me feel alive when no one else is watching? What am I meant to build in this world? These aren't questions of pain anymore. They're questions of purpose. See, chasing someone consumes you. It becomes your full-time job. You analyze every word, every text, every silence. You lose hours, sometimes years, trying to be enough for someone who doesn't even realize you're giving them everything. When that chase stops, all that energy has nowhere to go. And that's where purpose finds its way in. It's like the universe whispering, "Hey, remember you?" He starts to rediscover the things that once lit him up, the guitar gathering dust in the corner, the unfinished book sitting on his desk, the dream he abandoned because life got too loud. Slowly, piece by piece, he starts rebuilding his identity around something that's his, not borrowed, not begged for, not dependent on anyone else's validation. And here's the thing. When you redirect energy from chasing people to chasing purpose, everything changes. There's a new rhythm to your days. You start waking up with intention instead of anxiety. The same drive that used to keep you awake at night wondering why someone didn't love you now keeps you up brainstorming how you can grow, build, create impact. You trade confusion for clarity, obsession for progress. I knew a guy once who went through this. He'd been in a relationship where he gave everything. When it ended, he was wrecked. He didn't know what to do with himself. He said it felt like his life had no direction anymore. So he started running, literally. He ran to clear his head. Then one day he signed up for a marathon, trained for months, finished it. Then he started a nonprofit that helped kids through sports. Years later, he said, losing her was the worst pain I'd ever felt, but it gave me the life I was always supposed to live. That's the thing about heartbreak. It breaks you open. It forces you to look inside, to ask, what can I do with all this pain? Pain can either destroy you or define you, but if you let it, it can also direct you. When a man takes the energy he used to spend chasing someone and invests it in his growth, it's like watching a fire being repurposed, no longer burning out of control, but lighting the path ahead. That's what purpose does. It gives all that emotion, all that intensity, a place to go. You start to realize that purpose isn't about grand gestures or massive achievements. It's about living in alignment with what matters to you. Maybe it's building something from the ground up. Maybe it's creating art, mentoring others, traveling, serving, learning, healing. Purpose doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be real. And when a man starts to live with purpose, he stops needing approval because he's finally living in truth. Something shifts inside him. His posture changes, his tone changes, the way he carries himself. Calm, steady, certain. It's different. Not because he's pretending not to care, but because he's finally caring about the right things. When he's focused on purpose, rejection doesn't destroy him anymore. It refines him. He starts to see every setback not as a wall, but as a mirror. Something to learn from. When he redirects his energy, he also learns balance. He starts understanding that giving doesn't mean losing. He can give to his work, his health, his relationships, but not at the cost of himself. He starts to build a life that feels full, not frantic. And it's funny, when he stops chasing, the right people start showing up. Because now, he's not trying to fill a void, he's radiating from within. People are drawn to that, not because he's perfect, but because he's grounded. There's something magnetic about someone who's found peace in their purpose. Purpose gives him direction, but it also gives him peace. It teaches him patience. It reminds him that timing matters, that sometimes things fall apart so that better things can fall into place. It helps him see that not every loss is punishment. Sometimes it's protection. I once read a line that said, "The man who chases purpose never runs out of energy." And it's true, because when you're aligned with something meaningful, you stop running in circles, you start moving forward. He begins to find fulfillment in progress, not perfection. Every small victory, a finished project, a moment of gratitude, a new skill learned, becomes fuel. He starts building a quiet confidence, one that doesn't need applause, because purpose doesn't always look glamorous. Sometimes it's just showing up every day and giving your best even when no one notices. And maybe he still thinks about her sometimes. Maybe there are moments when he wonders what could have been. But now it doesn't hurt the same, because he's no longer living in that story. He's writing a new one where his energy isn't wasted on trying to convince someone of his worth, but invested in becoming the kind of person who doesn't need convincing. That's what redirection does. It transforms longing into momentum. It turns heartbreak into a catalyst. It takes all that heavy emotion and turns it into something lighter, something useful. It teaches him that purpose isn't something you find, it's something you create every time you choose to keep moving, to keep building, to keep believing. And eventually that same man who once chased someone who couldn't love him the way he needed looks back and realizes that losing her wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The moment he stopped living for someone else and started living for himself. That's the power of redirection. It's taking the energy that once begged to be noticed and turning it into something that can't be ignored. Growth, creation, legacy. Because when a man redirects his energy into purpose, he stops chasing what's temporary and starts building what's timeless. He becomes a man no longer defined by who he lost, but by what he found, himself. And that's where true strength begins. You know, there's a fine line between connection and attachment. It's so thin that most of us don't even see it until we've crossed it. Connection feels peaceful, grounding. It makes you grow. Attachment, though, it drains you, it consumes you. It starts as something beautiful, something full of promise, and then somewhere along the way it becomes something you can't live without. It stops being love and turns into dependence. You start measuring your worth by how close you can stay, how much they respond, how often they choose you. And that's when you lose yourself without even realizing it. When a man begins to understand the difference, it changes everything. In the beginning, he doesn't know. Most people don't. He meets someone, and it feels electric, alive. He feels seen, heard, desired. That spark makes him feel like he's found something rare, something worth holding on to. And so he holds on tightly, too tightly, because in his mind, losing that feeling would mean losing himself. What he doesn't see yet is that the tighter you grip something, the faster it slips away. Attachment is fear wearing love's clothes. It's the belief that if you lose them, you lose your value. It's needing someone to make you feel complete because you haven't yet learned that you already are. It's staying in situations that hurt because you're more afraid of being alone than of being empty. That's not connection. It's survival disguised as romance. Real connection doesn't demand that kind of pain. It doesn't require you to shrink or chase. It's not about filling voids. It's about sharing space. Two people who could stand alone but choose to stand together. And that's something a man only understands after he's been burned by attachment enough times to recognize its heat. He learns through experience. He learns by watching himself change for someone else, bending his own boundaries just to keep the peace. He learns by noticing how often he compromises his truth in the name of love. He learns by realizing that love that needs to be forced, negotiated, or begged for isn't love, it's fear. And fear, no matter how beautiful it looks, can never build something lasting. There's a kind of awakening that happens when he finally steps back and asks, what am I really holding on to? Because most of the time, it's not even the person, it's the memory of how they once made him feel. It's the illusion of safety, the dream of belonging. He realizes he wasn't clinging to love, he was clinging to the version of himself that felt alive when they were around. And once he sees that, everything starts to shift. It's a hard truth that what we call love is sometimes just the fear of letting go. But that truth is also freedom, because once a man can look at his reflection and say, I don't need you to make me whole, that's when he finally understands what connection is. Connection allows you to breathe. Attachment makes you suffocate. Connection gives, attachment takes. Connection says, I love you, but I also love me. Attachment says, I love you, so I'll lose me if I have to. One is choice, the other is addiction. And maybe that's the word, addiction, Because that's what attachment feels like. The highs are intoxicating, the lows unbearable. You crave the rush of attention, the hit of validation, the feeling of being chosen. But once the rush fades, the withdrawal begins. That's not love, that's dependency. And no one can thrive in that kind of space. He starts noticing how different connection feels. It's calm. It doesn't make him anxious. It doesn't make him doubt his worth every day. It doesn't demand that he chase or compete. It's mutual. It flows naturally. He doesn't have to perform or pretend. He doesn't have to earn love. He simply shares it. There's a peace that comes when you realize you don't have to hold on so tightly anymore. You can love fully without fear of loss. You can give without keeping score. You can let someone be free without that freedom feeling like a threat. That's connection. It's choosing each other, not clinging to each other. It's knowing that even if life pulls you in different directions, the love doesn't disappear. It just changes form. I once knew a man who said, "I used to confuse being needed with being loved." That stayed with me because that's what attachment does. It convinces you that love means being indispensable, that if someone can't live without you, that's proof you matter. But love isn't about possession, it's about presence. You don't need someone to need you. You need someone to see you. There's a quiet strength in being able to say, "I want you, but I don't need you to survive." It's not cold, it's healthy. It means your heart is open, but your identity isn't at risk. You can stand beside someone hand in hand without losing your footing. That's maturity. That's real love. The moment a man understands this, his relationships change. They become lighter. He stops trying to fix people. He stops trying to convince anyone to stay. He stops mistaking intensity for intimacy. He starts choosing peace over chaos. That doesn't mean he loves less. It means he loves better. He learns to be comfortable with space. He learns that distance doesn't always mean disconnection. Sometimes it's just breathing room, two people growing in their own directions, trusting that love can stretch without snapping. He learns that love isn't proven by proximity, it's proven by respect. And you can see it in how he carries himself. He doesn't chase attention anymore. He doesn't crumble when someone leaves. He doesn't confuse silence with rejection. He understands that real connection can withstand silence. It doesn't fade because of time or distance. It's steady, unshakable. It's a beautiful transformation. The man who once clung now stands tall. The man who once begged now builds. The man who once measured love by how much it hurt now measures it by how much it heals. And in that shift, he finds himself. He starts connecting differently with people, with life, with himself. He listens more deeply. He's present, not possessive. He sees love as something to nurture, not something to control. And when he meets someone who feels right, he doesn't rush to hold on. He lets it unfold. He trusts that what's meant for him won't need chasing. It'll meet him where he is. That's when love becomes what it was always supposed to be. Free, peaceful, alive, not a cage, not a test, not a constant tug of war. Just two souls choosing each other in the light of truth, not the shadow of fear. And maybe that's the quiet lesson hidden in every heartbreak, every failed chase, every goodbye. We don't lose love when we let go of attachment. We find it, the kind that doesn't demand proof, the kind that feels like coming home. Because real connection doesn't bind you, it frees you. It reminds you that love was never about holding tighter. It was about learning how to hold, right? There comes a point in a man's life when everything that used to make sense suddenly doesn't anymore. The things he thought mattered, being wanted, being chosen, being enough for someone, start to feel small compared to what's happening inside him. There's a quiet shift, almost invisible at first, where he begins to realize that maybe all the heartbreak, all the letting go, all the silent nights weren't punishment. Maybe they were preparation. Because through all of it, piece by piece, he's been becoming someone he didn't even know he could be. It doesn't happen overnight. Growth never does. It comes slowly, through pain and reflection, through mistakes and stillness. He starts to look at himself differently, not through the eyes of someone else, not through the lens of who he used to be, but through the clarity of experience. He sees the patterns, the ways he lost himself trying to make others happy, the times he stayed quiet when he should have spoken up. But instead of blaming himself, he starts forgiving. That's when he begins to heal. When a man finally stops chasing what doesn't serve him, when he learns the difference between love and attachment, when he finds purpose beyond validation, something powerful happens. He comes home to himself. There's this grounded energy about him now. He's not in a rush anymore. He doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. He's learned that peace isn't found in being chosen. It's found in choosing himself every single day. He starts waking up differently. He doesn't dread the quiet anymore. He respects it. He begins to enjoy the rhythm of his own life. He drinks his coffee slower. He takes time to notice the way sunlight falls through the window. He learns to breathe again, not shallow, anxious breaths filled with worry, but deep, calm ones that remind him he's alive. He's not trying to escape himself anymore. He's learning to be present in his own company. And the beautiful part is that the world starts responding to that energy. People can feel it. They don't see a man who's chasing approval. They see someone who's centered, steady, unshakable. The kind of man who can walk away from chaos and not lose his peace in the process. He doesn't attract with effort. He attracts by being. That quiet confidence, that sense of self, there's nothing louder than that. He starts to understand that strength isn't in how much he can carry, but in knowing when to let go. It's not in being unbreakable, but in being unafraid to rebuild. Every scar tells a story, not of defeat, but of resilience. He's lived, he's learned, and now he leads, not with pride, but with calm conviction. He doesn't demand respect, he earns it through the way he moves, the way he listens, the way he treats others. There's a kind of maturity that only comes from pain that didn't destroy you. He's not bitter about the past, he's grateful for it. Because without the heartbreak, he wouldn't have known his strength. Without the silence, he wouldn't have found his voice. Without the endings, he wouldn't have discovered his purpose. Everything that once felt like loss was actually shaping him into the man he was always meant to be. And now, when he loves, it's different. It's not desperate or fearful. It's honest, patient, and kind. He doesn't love to fill a void. He loves to share his abundance. He doesn't cling, he connects. He doesn't chase, he chooses. His love isn't about possession, it's about presence. He knows that love isn't supposed to take him away from himself, it's supposed to bring him closer to who he already is. He walks through life with a quiet sense of gratitude. He knows peace doesn't mean everything is perfect. It means he's learned to stay calm in the middle of the storm. He's not the same man who once sought validation in other people's eyes. He's grown beyond that. He's found his own reflection, and he finally likes what he sees. He's become the man he was meant to be. Not flawless, not untouchable, but real, grounded, open. A man who knows his worth, protects his peace, and moves with purpose. The kind of man who no longer seeks the light because he's learned how to be it. So when a man finally stops chasing her, it's not the end of love, it's the beginning of wisdom. It's when he realizes that love isn't something you run after. It's something you grow into when you're ready. And maybe someday, when two people who've both done their growing meet, there's no chasing at all. There's just peace. And that's when love finally feels like home.